So thank you. Again, my name is Mike Fertig. When I was first asked to do this, I said, I'm not an economist, I'm not an analyst. I spend my day talking to people about their retirement goals. I talk about basic financial planning principles. And they said, well, we want an economic forecast. So I said, okay. I work with good economists and good analysts, so I made them give me a bunch of information. And today I'm going to cheat. I don't usually do this at presentations, but I'm going to read at you. I have a lot of notes here. That's why I gave you the handouts. So we're going to kind of follow right along with this. Let me just spend a few minutes kind of providing a recap of 2022. And then we'll get into what we're expecting as we move into 2023. Last year was a record year in a lot of ways. On the economic front, we had easing, record easing, cheap money flooding the economy during the 18 months or so following the COVID outbreak. And then we had tightening that was very, very broad-based. You know, we saw a surge in mortgage rates. We saw oil and gas prices spike in the summer months. And then we had stock prices collapse as we entered a bear market. And then, of course, the big elephant in the room was the Federal Reserve raising interest rates at the fastest clip in decades. All of those were economic tightening measures that were designed to slow economic growth. A result of that is what you have on the next page. We saw stocks have one of their worst years since the 1920s. And we officially entered a bear market in 2022, which it sounds scarier than it is. It just means stocks dropped by more than 20% during the year. In reality, that happens about every 5 years on average. So it happens with some regularity. So far, I've been in the business for 30 years. We could go back past the last 100 years. Every time we've had that type of a market, guess what's happened? The market has gone higher and gone on to new record highs. We don't expect this to be any different. The problem or the difficulty is knowing when the tide will turn and the market will start to head higher. So if anyone can do that with any regularity, I think I can get you a job with our place. Nobody can. You don't know when, but it will happen. I think 2022 may have felt worse than other years where we have a difficult market simply because the stock market was under pressure almost from the very first trading day, right? That next graph you have is just a graph of the S&P 500. You can see that the market hit its peak for the year on January 4th. So 4 days into the year, the market peaked. It was pretty much straight downhill after that. We had a lot of bumps along the way, but you know, the stock market was under pressure almost from day one. But in our opinion, and you're going to see on the next graph there, the story of 2022 was really on the fixed income side. 2022 was the worst year for fixed income going all the way back to the 1930s. And that made things more painful because bonds didn't do what bonds typically do, which is provide some safety and some balance when stocks are getting killed. Bonds ended up getting clobbered right along with stocks. So before last year, the worst year in the fixed income market in the last 45 years was 1994. And in 1994, bonds were down about 3%. So 3% sounds like a vacation based on what we had last year. 3% would have been terrific. When you add all that up, you know, the stock market getting killed, bonds getting killed, the typical balanced portfolio, which just means you own stocks and bonds, a typical balanced portfolio had its worst performance in almost the last century. So I wanted to rehash a little bit of what happened in 2022 just because of kind of how unprecedented it was in our lifetimes. The good news is we made it out of 2022. We believe 2023 looks a lot brighter, certainly on the fixed income side, but also on the equity side. The thing that really drove markets last year were two things: inflation and the Federal Reserve, right? We think that 2023 is going to be more about company earnings and the Federal Reserve. And I'll kind of explain what I mean by both of those. The first 6 months of the year, we think are going to continue to show a lot of volatility. Doesn't mean I think we're going to drop another 20%, but I think it's going to bounce around. We had a really, really good start to the year. Now we're seeing the market turn the other way. I think that is what we're in store for at least the first half of the year. And while the consumer, and Andy can probably talk more to this, but we think the consumer is still in really, really good shape. But all of the savings that had built up during the pandemic are pretty much gone. You can see that on this personal savings rate chart. Personal savings for consumers jumped dramatically during COVID for a few reasons. First, Congress and the Fed flooded the economy with cash, and nobody was going out spending any money during the bulk of 2022, right? There wasn't anywhere to go. We were all locked down in our homes, binging Tiger King or whatever it was, right? Remember that? And we weren't coming to restaurants like this and spending money, so we built up a good bit of our savings. As the economy reopened, you saw the U.S. consumer basically spent down all of those excess savings. That means there's going to be a little less ability for people to spend as we move into 2023. So far it sounds like all I've given you is bad news. Good news is coming. We think what's a little bit more important is that earnings for S&P 500 type companies are going to be pressured as we get into 2023. Mainly because the Fed, of course, has been hiking interest rates at a pretty aggressive rate. It takes on average about 18 months for those interest rate hikes to actually filter into the economy. So we think it's important to point out that there are certainly some positives on the horizon. The first is what's called China's zero COVID policies, and there's an easing going on with China's zero COVID policies. We think that is likely going to jumpstart Asia's kind of growth engine, and will help to catapult economic growth globally as we get into 23. Secondly, if we do have a recession this year, and I think it's reasonable to assume that we will have a recession, it will be the most telegraphed recession in modern history. And why is that a good thing? We think that stocks have come very close to pricing a lot of this stuff in already. So a lot of the volatility that we've already seen is based on what's going to happen. The market is typically about 6 months ahead of where the economy is. So we view that as a good thing. Secondly, and I'll let the business owners talk to this, but we think that business owners, CEOs, they've already made plans to kind of bolster their business for a recessionary environment. So they'll be able to withstand a lot of the economic downturn that might ensue if we have what we think we're going to have, which is a mild recession in 2023. All right, then we're going to couple that with another piece, and this is the question I get the most, which is, well, what's going to send the market higher? We think we're going to get to a point, hopefully sooner than most investors think, again, where the sell-off in equities that has already happened combined with inflation. Inflation is really key here. You can see on this chart, inflation has already started to turn lower. That ought to be enough reason for the Fed to start signaling, at least, for a pivot in their policy, especially if inflation gets back down closer to the 4% mark in 2023. We think they'll pivot, which means they're going to either stop increasing rates or they might even start talking about cutting rates. That should be enough to drive the next rally higher in the stock market. And it's one of the main reasons we think that we're going to end the year higher than where we are today. One or actually maybe two more charts. And I wanted to point this out. You should never invest based solely on historical information. But I like historical information. I don't know what other better guide we have, especially when you're talking about stock markets. But if we look at this chart that shows the annual returns of the S&P 500 going all the way back to the 30s, so we have almost 100 years of history here. There are negative years in the stock market in 29 of these years. So we get negative returns in the market about 30% of the time. But what you find when you look at those 29 down years and you look at the very next year, there are only 6 instances where the markets are negative again. So we think we have history on our side as we move into 23. And I want to point out that I'm just talking about stocks here, right? This is just the stock market. If I had more time, I'd show you 3-year, 5-year, 10-year holding periods. Then I'd show you what happens if you add bonds and what happens if you add small company. We're just talking about large cap US stocks here, and you have pretty reassuring numbers. Now let me go back to the Fed once more because of how important they are to the markets and how important they've become really to just stock market performance. The Federal Reserve has 2 mandates, really, truly. They have 2 things that they're after. The primary mandate is to keep inflation at around 2%. That's what they shoot for. The second mandate is to maintain full employment, or as close to full employment as you can get. If we were in an environment where unemployment was going up and inflation was still increasing, I think the case for a hard landing or a severe recession would be a lot stronger. But the fact that inflation is already starting to come down means that the Fed and what they've done is so far working. So you can, on the very last chart, the unemployment rate is at or near a 50-year low. So if the Fed can get inflation down without causing an increase in the unemployment rate, we think that points to a pretty high probability that we're going to get what they call a soft landing or a mild recession. So it's really hard to make predictions on where the market's headed short term, 3 months, 6 months. But I will say we think the first half of the year, again, is going to remain volatile. But we do believe we will end 2023 higher than where we are today. The bulk of the pain is behind us, and we think there's more good news than there is bad news in the economy. And with that, I will kind of wrap up. Oh, I have one other thing. I did want to tell you the stock that's guaranteed to double this year. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to make sure everyone was still awake.
That was quiet. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. And I sat down and talked with Mr. Mowry and tried to figure out exactly what you were expecting from here today. So I'll give you an overview of what is new and what is coming in Bethel Park. It seems to be the things that people want to know and have any questions, and I will try to answer them as much as I can. You know, we've had some interesting things. The Walgreens has left, and that's an interesting thing in itself because they fought so hard to get here. That piece of property was so difficult to develop, and they went beyond any expectations to develop that, and cost was not an issue. So now they've moved on, and the only interest we've had so far is Goodwill. Goodwill showed some interest in that building. Also the Crave Barbecue, that is out of business, but that is a franchise. It's not necessarily the business itself. So from the way we understand it, or I understand it, is that the franchisee went bankrupt. So we're not sure if it's going to be another person in there with the same product or something new. So that now we'll talk about the one that's being the big subject on social media is the GetGo. Lots of rumors. Here's as much as I know, as we know at this time, is that GetGo did not secure their lease. They were still negotiating with the landowner to negotiate their lease, and they have not reached an agreement. So therefore, GetGo is going to demolish the building and take out the tanks, and a new client, a new business owner, which will be somewhat similar to GetGo, is interested in developing that site. So that's where we're at there. And then one of the things we all talk about in town is Popeyes. When is Popeyes coming? And and then what do you see on social media? Oh, we know what's going on. Kentucky Fried Chicken suing Popeyes because they're coming in, and all that is just a lot of things that I'm not privy to. Let's talk about that shopping center. The owners of that shopping center have come in with many different kinds of plans, from taking out Firestone to putting a giant new restaurant along 88 with outdoor seating and everything. And the only thing that's ever happened was the bank went in. Other than that, not much else has happened. Popeyes has been approved, and it's been approved for almost 2 years now, so they can go in what they want. But the latest information we got is we think that the owners of the shopping center are trying to sell the whole shopping center. So, and there's a problem with that. I mean, with the new laws that we have in place for water retention and water runoff, if there's a major development on that property, you know, that was the old Ames in Arcadian Gardens, that all comes into play. So that water goes to the entrance of the park. So we all know what happens in severe rains. The Corrigan Drive entrance is underwater. So there'll be some major money that they have to put into that shopping center for a major land development. They've been trying to do this and do that to try and get away from that, but it needs to be done. So whoever buys it or wants to develop it, that's something that they're going to have to deal with. And also too, the splash pad, we just opened up the bids. All looks well. It's better than we expected, but not as good as we wanted. But in this market, it's okay. We'll deal with it. And hopefully by the end of this year, we will have the splash pad behind the schoolhouse. Also too, the pickleball courts over at Millennium. That's been a wonderful thing people have wanted. Those will hopefully be bid out, and we can afford those, and sometime soon we'll have those too. As for what we do to promote business, we do it on social media, but from my perspective, one of the things that the council looks hard at and the police look at is the environment that we live in. What are we dealing with? How is the world reacting? And we all know what's happening in the city of Pittsburgh, and if you turn a blind eye to that, then you're being foolish. So we stay on top, and we have a wonderful police chief, Chief O'Connor, that stays on top to make our community as safe as it possibly can be. In fact, we just hired, I added one more policeman to our staff to help with all these different crimes we have, whether it's white-collar crime, people wandering through and stopping at businesses and walking out with everything, and they're not even from around here, they're from foreign countries or from other states. The world has changed, and we have really wanted to change with it to stay on top of it. So if we think that we are not affected, then that's a foolish thing to do. All the things that go on in the world today happen here also. It just depends on how you handle it and what you do about it, and try to stay on top of it. So if you have any other questions for me, one other thing is just an interesting idea is in our, you've all been to the intersection of Irishtown and Logan, the worst rated intersection in all of Bethel Park, Irishtown, Logan. Through our 10-year plan and through conversations, someday, maybe not today, but someday there'll be a roundabout there. Just like the one on McLaughlin. It works. Believe it or not, it works. There won't be many residents impacted by it. And the wonderful thing about it, when that happens, there'll also be a bridge for the trail to extend over Logan and continue into Industrial Park. That is the long-range plan. Now we get to South Park Road, I don't know, that's a whole nother thing. But we'll manage it when we get there. But that's the wonderful things that are happening. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Andy? Always enjoy having lunch with Mark and Mike. But thank you, everyone. I was thrilled to death when I was asked to come and talk to my fellow business owners of the South Hills, and especially in my industry, the home improvement industry. And it's great to see Big Fish here and Brookside Lumber here and some other ones in our home improvement industry itself. But I like to think I have a very unique perspective on our community, on Bethel Park, on the South Hills, because of the different activities that I'm involved with. The hardware store, I've been there for 50 years, so I have a long-term understanding of our community and the business, some ups and downs in the industry itself, but I started there when I was 13 years old, so do the math. As far as how long I've been there and the perspective I have with it. But the first day I was there on the job, I cleaned the toilets, dusted shelves, and mopped the floor. And I haven't done that since yesterday. As a business owner, you do it all. But along with that, I have some unique perspective, I'll say, on our community, being one of the founding fathers of our Bethel Park Community Foundation. The Bethel Park Education Foundation, being president of the Bethel Park Public Library, chairing the strategic plan for the Bethel Park School District the last 3 or 4 years. So I reach a lot of different individuals in our community, from business owners to residents to women's groups to all the different aspects of it. And I learn a lot by being involved in all of those. And the last 4 years have been a struggle for a lot of people in our community, a lot of the businesses in our community. And I would say that I've been blessed in that the pandemic did not have a negative impact on the home improvement industry, the part that I'm involved in, because of the different aspects of what I'm involved in. It's not just people repairing homes, but it's building outdoor living areas and so forth. And it was very insightful during the pandemic to track what was going on in Bethel Park, but in our community, but also in our industry itself. From the first week that the world shut down, my number one seller was plungers. We sold almost a 20-year supply of plungers in 1 week. That's hundreds upon hundreds of them. Why? We're trying to figure out, everyone is stuck at home. And then everyone's sending the Lysol wipes down the toilets and plugging up all the plumbing and so forth, and then sending it down to our wastewater treatment plant, and then Mark sends it down to Castle Shannon. But then tracking what people were doing during the pandemic, from all of a sudden, okay, we're home, so now we're going to be painting. We sold more paint that year than we did in the last 20 years. So just watching the transition of then closet organizers and garage organizers, and then when spring finally came, the number of outdoor patios and patio furniture and Weber grills and so forth with it. So the 2021 was the best year in our history, and we've been there. We're starting our 70th year in business. So it was very insightful, let's say, in watching what was going on. And then the economists and everyone in our industry was saying that you can't sustain such growth like you had in 2021. So 22 comes up, and okay, 2021 we were up 70%. 2022, no, I didn't have that growth. We were only up 35% in 2022. So if the economy continues to grow for us in our industry, but it's been enjoyable, educational, tracking what the consumers are doing, what they're looking for, what they're watching for, what their needs are, and what they want. And being a small business in our world, it enables us to change course and directions instantaneously. So if we see something happen, we can make a decision. Who makes a decision? Me or my wife, and she tells me what decision to make on it. But we can do things very rapidly to track the market and track the consumers with what they're doing. And in our home improvement industry itself, here we are January, and for me, my business is very weather driven. The worse the weather, the busier I am. I love tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, and snowstorms, because those are very busy for us. But here we are in a January, it's 60 degrees again today. So for me, the winter business, brings $250,000 a month to me. I've had no winter, and here we are still 2% up in January after the first half of the month, and that's with no winter business itself. So to think where I would be if it did snow, and hopefully it will snow tomorrow. But the consumer on my end of it, on our end of it, they're still spending a lot of money. Maybe their savings has diminished, but and I don't want to say our Bethel Park, our South Hills family and friends are maybe shielded a little bit from it. And I do, part of the other things I do, I have a radio show on KDKA. 27 years I've been on with them. And the show that is directly after my home improvement show is AAA Travel. So I talk to the travel industry a lot because they're all very good friends of mine. And they are just now, the past couple of months, seeing the travel industry really start to kick back to where it was pre-pandemic. And what that means for me is that there is still a lot of people that are home. So there's still a lot of people building their outdoor patios, putting on new roofs, putting on new rooms, and so forth. So the industry for me shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. I added additional personnel every year for the last couple of years. But in also having the small business that you can make changes, one of the big things in any business that was impacted was people, employees, getting staff, finding staff, and so forth. And for me, during the pandemic, yes, I had employees that were afraid to work. Okay, you're afraid to work, you stay home. Still paid 100%. And yes, we had the help with the PPP money and everything else on it, but I lost no employees, permanently lost. But one of the things that I had to do in 2021 into 2022, my payroll doubled. It almost to the penny doubled, keeping the same staff, but paying the people what the going market rate was. So I didn't want to lose the employees because I needed the employees for the growth of the business. And to not lose the employees, especially your core employees, you have to pay them what the going market rate is. Could I afford to doubling? I couldn't afford not to. And in saying that, business being up 30% again last year, but more importantly on the business side of it, my profit margin was up 4 points. And if you're in the business world, 1 point, you're dancing, you're having a party. To do 4 points and still doubling your payroll on it, it says a lot for the industry, the business, and the potential of what you're out there doing. And could I always use more employees? Absolutely, but I could still be selective and not just anyone who walks in the street, yeah, you're hired. We can be selective as to what we're doing. One of the other areas, one of the other industries I help is, I belong to Nemacolin Country Club. Nemacolin Country Club suffered a lot during the pandemic, but I took over their house, let's say, working with personnel, working with memberships, and last year I was able to double the growth of the country club members. So going from 250 to 500 members. But what does that mean for the business world? That's still a lot of discretionary income. And if people are joining country clubs, they have the discretionary income. But then personnel side of it, we just put out a memo Monday that we need cooks and staff. I got 37 resumes in 24 hours. So the people are out there that want to work, it's just the pay, the atmosphere, the company, and everything that you have to offer with it. So I don't want to say I shrug the complaints of people saying, I have a company, but I can't get employees. They're out there. It's just a matter of what you are looking for and how to find them with it. But, so on the business world itself, like Mark and I were joking when we got here, we live in Camelot. We love Bethel, we love where we live and so forth with it, but there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of opportunity, and having the pleasure of doing the strategic plan for the Bethel Park School District. We have a lot going on in the next 10 years with it. I know there was a lot in the community about, oh, you're closing 5 schools and building 1 new school. If you knew all the details with it, you'd be on board with it. And 95% of the community is. You're always going to have some of the naysayers with it, but the doing the strategic plan, doing the population study, we are not losing families of any degree in Bethel Park, and in the 25-year study that we did on population, it's going to be inching up a little bit. There is no decline in population in Bethel Park. So whether you have a hardware store or a tutoring company or finance company or a roofing company, you live in Camelot, enjoy it. And then I'll shut up. Otherwise I'll talk for hours, so.
Any questions for anyone?
We love questions.
Question?
Andy, I've known you for
A long time.
45, 50 years. I've lived up for a lot of time and run an incredible operation.
Thank you.
When I'm faced to get a spring for my garage door, I could go to Home Depot and pay $9 and have an uneducated person, or I can come to EV Hardware and I can pay $11 and have an educated person, and it works for me every day. But there's a rumor about you.
Uh-oh.
And the rumor is that, and I don't want to put you on the spot,
Good.
but you've never walked into a Walmart.
That's true. I don't believe in them.
I think it's fantastic, and I wanted to just.
And no, that's very true. I never walk into a Walmart. I've been in Lowe's and Home Depot, but I'll never walk in a Walmart. So my wife wants to go every so often. I wait outside and open the door for people, but I won't go in. It's just a personal opinion.
I hope you don't mind.
No, I love it. But it's true.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just wanted to make a quick statement
Sure.
reinforcing your presentation. I deal with group health and employee benefits, and what you had related to us about the market that you're doing well in. It explains the significant amount of home remodelers
Yeah.
who are investigating group health insurance to retain their workers. And I'm finding a lot of those individuals have employees that aren't in their 20s, a lot of them in their 40s,
Yep.
and they want to hold on to these individuals that have skill. So that, that just, from what you had mentioned, answered my question, because I was sitting there this year going like, why am I getting so many of these guys asking me questions?
Yeah.
And that's the answer.
Oh, and it's the employees themselves, they're demanding more, if you want to say. They're deserving of more depending on the employee and where they are in their job cycle. Do I enjoy paying a 15-year-old high school student $10, $11 to walk in the door, where 2 years ago it was $7.25? But it's different to a new 35-year-old driver that's going to be delivering rental equipment that is starting at $28 an hour, where 2 years ago it maybe was $15 an hour. It's the person, the age, the quality, the skill, and everything that are working with. And yes, I have complete health care for my full-time staff. We have retirement, 401s, and so forth through a company called Heffron Tillison. Is that right?
Never heard of them.
Barn, somebody, with it. But the out at Nemacolin Country Club, one of the things that I did last year for them is they had a hard time retaining employees, but a lot of the wait staff was still at $2.85 an hour plus tip, no benefits. Okay, the staff that we started hiring this week, and once again, if you're in the food industry, the wait staff, the starting salary for a waitress is $10 an hour with complete all tips and a retirement. If you're working more than, if you make more than $5,000 a year, so depending on the seasonal staff, and if you want the health care, the retirement, and so forth. So going from $2.50 an hour to $10 an hour, that is huge. But if that person who is trying to decide if they want to be a waitress, waiter, a bartender, because they love the industry, but they could go and leave the industry and make the $15, $20 an hour, knowing that tips are huge for them and they can make $100, $200 a day in tips if they have the right personality. But at least on the slow days, they know that at $10 an hour, they're not going to work and going to come home and they made a whole $20. So even in the food industry itself, finding the employees, the people are there. Anyone who wants to work, there's jobs for them. It's finding your right niche where you're happy, but also working for companies that are paying a livable wage. Now, like I said, am I a fan of minimum wage being mandated to me that I have to pay $15 an hour? Not even a little bit. But knowing that, okay, even a 14-year-old high school kid starting out, then I'm going to teach you how to mop a floor today, and here's $10 an hour, $12 an hour on the wage. Times have changed. Times have changed in every industry, and you're not going to find the minimum wage employees anymore. And the benefits, to your point, are huge. They all want them, and they all need them. So, agreeing with you in a long-winded way.
I've seen that in the restaurant business as well.
Yeah.
I would also, your store is a perfect example. I would also talk about the customer experience. And so as you're setting that standard within your facility, making sure that your employees are buying into that standard and they feel a part of that, really has that return investment. If you're not doing that,
Right.
You're gonna go and you're gonna be like, yep, what do you want today? And it's just gonna be a completely different, and that's when customers leave. And so, I'm sitting on the advisory council for the University of Richmond. They have a customer experience program. And just getting businesses and corporations especially to understand that is very, very difficult. And so when you put up what's your barrier for success, a lot of them, we can't get the right people. Well, that's the barrier that we need to break down first and figure out why that barrier is there. And that's really, you have a great model for that.
One of the things I thoroughly enjoy doing is I love our school district. Bethel Park School District is amazing. But I enjoy going to the high school or even the middle school. I teach a class for the 8th graders. They call it Bold and Gold. Girls only leadership development and boys only leadership development. So they split them off, and I talk to the different groups throughout the year about getting your first job. How do you get your first paycheck and so forth? Or going up to the high school. We have an amazing organization in Bethel Park called DECA, D-E-C-A. I still don't know after 50 years what DECA stands for. I swear it doesn't stand for anything. But the DECA students are your young entrepreneurs, marketing, business majors, and so forth. And when I walked in September to talk to them for the first time about work ethics, marketing, communications, eye contact, all this stuff that you hope they all know, and sometimes they learn it, sometimes they don't. But these 3 young ladies, after talking to them for about 2 hours, came up to me and said, "Mr. Amrine, you're who we're looking for." And I'm like, "Okay, how can I help you?" Well, DECA, they do tournaments. So they do regional, state, and national tournaments on their business plans and business models and so forth. And they're like, "We're seniors this year. Every year we win regionals, we win state, and we just come short in national. You're going to help us win nationals." I'm like, oh, I am? I said, yes, with you, with your help, with your guidance, you have to find us our DECA project this year, and we are going to win nationals. And that's all they've been talking about since September. Their state tournament is in 2 weeks. So when they put together a business plan, a marketing plan for the rental industry, it's one of the other businesses I have. It's our fastest growing company is the rental. So I said, here you go, young ladies. You put together a business plan. I will give you a budget. Here's $40,000, and this is real money. You have 6 months to hire, to develop a plan, to market the business, to learn the business, and put a plan together with it. And since September, when they started the project, through the end of the year, they doubled our rental business with what they did, what they went out into the public, learning the machinery, operating the machinery, going to community events, and marketing our rental company to the community itself. And if they don't win national, I don't know what's going to happen, but their teacher asked me, tone that down. They're getting nervous that they're not going to know what to do if they don't win nationals. I says, well, then they better win. But the kids are amazing at the school. And I have an ongoing flow of employees. I haven't, other than some specific job categories, I have never had to advertise for employees because of the feed I get from South Park, Bethel Park, Peters Township, DECA students, National Honor Society students. And I love teaching and helping the youth, but there's an awful lot of them that want to work and just need guided a little bit.
Which is good piggyback for us because we're putting together a task force on workforce in our serving communities and trying to find out what we can do to educate some of our, business owners and other aspects of how we can help them in getting employees and how to today. So that's something that if any of you have an interest in serving on, I already talked to Ian, he doesn't know it yet.
I'm not on it.
But anyway, let me know. Okay? Any more questions? If not, I want to thank all of our presenters. It's
Our
been
pleasure.
very informative and
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.